The air trembled with an acrid tang, thick with the unnatural stench of burning graphite and metal. Within the labyrinthine corridors of Reactor 4, an oppressive silence was shattered by a thunderous roar, then a catastrophic explosion that ripped through the steel and concrete, hurling shockwaves of raw devastation. Blinding light seared the dense shadows, instantly vaporizing everything within the immediate radius, leaving only fragments of a world once familiar. The heat was a living entity, a merciless beast suffocating any breath of life, while an eerie, unnatural hum pulsed through the stillness, a silent herald of radioactive doom. Inside this relentless inferno, the plant workers, captives of sudden chaos, faced an invisible enemy, their skin itching with an almost spiritual agony, breaths choking on deadly particles that crept unseen into lungs and souls alike. The seconds blurred. Panic dissolved logic as unseen rays penetrated flesh and bone, reshaping fate inside this cataclysm birthing silent death. The legacy of Chernobyl transcends nuclear science to probe the darkest corners of human ambition and folly. It stands as a grim testament to technological overreach, where ideological dogma drowns scientific caution and silenced dissenting voices. But more than a tale of failure, it prompts profound reckoning. How society values safety, transparency, and the sanctity of life amid the pursuit of power. Philosophically, Chernobyl embodies the fragile boundary between human control and nature's indifferent force, a sobering reminder of humility amid hubris. As radioactive ash settled, so too did the imperative for vigilance, ethical leadership, and unyielding accountability. Today, the zone remains both a monument and a warning, a peculiar silence that urges reflection on the price of progress. The call is unequivocal: to learn from this catastrophe, not merely in engineering but in governance and humanity itself, guarding the future against repeating this silent disaster through informed action and relentless awareness. As days turned into weeks on the island, Selkirk's initial determination gave way to escalating challenges that tested the limits of human endurance. The lush exterior of the Juan Fernandez Islands hid a harsh reality. Scarce freshwater sources forced him to climb treacherous slopes, his muscles aching with every step, to reach hidden streams. He fashioned crude tools from what he could salvage, sharpening stones into knives and weaving vines into ropes, but hunger gnawed relentlessly. Goats, descendants of those introduced by earlier sailors, roamed the hills, but hunting them proved perilous. Selkirk's musket, with its limited ammunition, required precision shots amid the dense brush, where one misfire could mean starvation. Wild cats, fierce and untamed, became both adversaries and unlikely allies, as he learned to avoid their claws while observing their hunting patterns. Internally, doubts crept in. Memories of shipboard camaraderie haunted his nights, amplifying the silence that enveloped him. Decisions compounded his struggles. Should he build a more secure shelter high in the caves to evade potential predators, or risk the lower beaches for easier access to the sea? Each choice carried consequences, like the time he ventured too far inland and lost his way, spending a frantic day retracing steps under a blazing sun. As months passed, Selkirk adapted, domesticating feral cats to control the rat population that threatened his stores, and developing skills in firemaking and rudimentary farming. Yet, external pressures mounted. Storms battered the coast, eroding his makeshift camp and forcing rebuilds, while the psychological toll of solitude deepened. He talked to himself, journaled on scraps of bark, and wrestled with despair, his mind a battleground of hope and resignation. This rising tension built inexorably toward a breaking point, where survival hinged not just on physical prowess, but on the unyielding spirit that would later inspire tales of human triumph over adversity. The climax of Selkirk's ordeal arrived in a whirlwind of desperation and ingenuity, for years into his isolation, when the elements and his own resolve collided in a test of ultimate survival. One fateful day, as thunderheads gathered over the Pacific, a ferocious storm lashed the island, winds howling like vengeful spirits and waves crashing with thunderous force against the rocks. Selkirk, huddled in his cave shelter, watched as his carefully constructed world threatened to unravel. Torrents of rain flooded his fire pit, and the goats he relied on scattered in panic. In that moment, Hunger and exposure pushed him to his limits. His musket, now rusted and unreliable, failed to fire during a hunt, leaving him face to face with a charging goat. With adrenaline surging, he lunged, using his knife in a frantic struggle, the animal's horns grazing his arm as he wrestled it to the ground. Blood mixed with rain on his skin, the pain a sharp reminder of his vulnerability. This wasn't just a physical confrontation. It was the emotional peak of his solitude, where thoughts of his past life, family, friends, the sea's freedom, clashed with the raw reality of his present. As the storm subsided, Selkirk emerged to survey the damage. His garden washed away, his cats scattered, and his spirits at their lowest ebb. Yet, in this breaking point, a turning inward occurred. He reflected on his choices, from the mutiny aboard the Cinque Ports to his adaptations on the island, realizing that true survival demanded not just strength, but wisdom. The sensory details of that day, the salt spray on his face, the acrid smoke of his reignited fire, the distant cry of seabirds, etched themselves into his memory, marking the pivotal shift that transformed him from a castaway into a symbol of resilience, setting the stage for the world to learn of his story. In the immediate aftermath of his climactic struggles, Selkirk's rescue brought a mix of elation and disorientation, as the world he had left behind rushed back with overwhelming force. On February 1, 1709, the privateering ship Duke, commanded by William Dampier, an old acquaintance, spotted signals from the island and pulled ashore to find a man transformed. Selkirk, bearded and bronzed by the sun, emerged from the trees, his eyes wide with a blend of joy and trepidation. The crew stared in awe at this wild figure, who spoke in a voice roughened by years of solitude. The transition was jarring. Aboard the Duke, he devoured fresh provisions, his body unaccustomed to such richness after a diet of goat meat and berries, leading to bouts of illness that highlighted the physical toll of his ordeal. Emotionally, the losses weighed heavily. Friends and family from his past were mere memories, and the island's isolation had forged a self-reliance that made reintegration difficult. Acts of courage shone through, as Selkirk shared his survival techniques with the crew, aiding in their own voyages, while failures surfaced in his accounts of despair and near madness. The island itself bore the scars of his presence. Cleared paths, tamed animals, now abandoned. Zooming out, this event rippled through the maritime community. News of Selkirk's story spread like wildfire, captivating sailors and scholars alike, and exposing the human cost of exploration. His experiences underscored the broader implications for 18th-century navigation, where such abandonments were not uncommon, revealing the fragility of life at sea and the resilience required to endure it. Alexander Selkirk's journey to that desolate island began years earlier in the coastal villages of Lower Largo, Scotland, where he was born in 1676 into a family of tanners and sailors. From a young age, Selkirk was drawn to the sea, its vastness promising adventure and escape from the mundane life ashore. By the late 1690s, he had signed on as a sailing master aboard privateering vessels, those daring ships sanctioned by the British Crown to raid enemy vessels during the War of the Spanish Succession. It was a time of global conflict, with European powers clashing over colonies and trade routes, turning the oceans into battlegrounds of commerce and conquest. Selkirk's expertise in navigation made him invaluable, but his fiery temperament often landed him in trouble. Aboard the Cinque Ports in 1703, under the command of Captain Thomas Stradling, tensions simmered as the ship, battered by storms and plagued by disease, became increasingly unseaworthy. Selkirk, ever the pragmatist, argued vehemently for repairs, warning that continuing the voyage could lead to disaster. His clashes with Stradling highlighted the era's harsh maritime hierarchies, where a captain's word was law, and mutiny lurked in every shadow. As the ship limped towards the South American coast, the crew's morale fractured. Provisions dwindled, and scurvy weakened their bodies. It was during a stop at the Juan Fernandez Islands that Selkirk's fate was sealed. In a fit of rage, he demanded to be left behind, perhaps believing he could survive until a rescue ship arrived, or simply refusing to sail on a doomed vessel. Stradling, seeing an opportunity to rid himself of a troublesome subordinate, agreed. Thus, on that fateful day in 1704, Selkirk was marooned. his backstory a tapestry of ambition, conflict, and the inexorable pull of exploration. This event wasn't isolated. It reflected the broader perils of 18th-century seafaring, where men like Selkirk were pawns in the great game of empire, their personal struggles mirroring the era's themes of isolation and self-reliance amid the vast, unforgiving world.